we started talking about what?
We were talking about branders.
We were talking about identification. What are our different types of ID?
Ear tags, ear notching, tattooing, branding, leg tags, watercolor paint only in ag class.
All right, ear tag, ear notch,
Tattooing,
tattoo,
branding, leg tag.
Watercolor paint. But
Yeah.
only in ag class.
She doesn't really recommend doing that anywhere else. She said.
Okay, so I want to tell you guys a little bit more about these ID methods. We talked about why it was important yesterday, right? We talked about the fact that keeping good records, medication records, birth records, different stuff like that. So an ear tag, I want to reiterate a couple things that we talked about yesterday. An ear tag, this is a small one.
Mason has a big one.
Okay. Okay, here, please. Ear tag goes in the ear tagger little clamp.
Ear agger.
Yeah, I know. We're just
It's like Mason's ear.
Put it in my
Okay.
ear.
I don't care. Go ahead.
spiky part, we passed this around yesterday. Did you guys all feel it?
I didn't
Yeah.
feel
You need a
It goes on like that.
Do it.
We put it on an ear. You put an ear in between those two. Okay. And then when you squeeze it together, it permanently binds. Okay.
Always
So
wanted
it's sharp
piercings.
enough that it goes through the ear
Prove it.
and then permanently binds together. So you cannot take these apart once you join them. What's really important is you make sure that when you load the tagger, you have the number facing outwards, so that way you'll be able to read it. Otherwise, it faces towards the animal, and then that defeats the purpose. Ear tags are really nice because they're the easiest to read from far away. You're looking at a pen of animals. They're the easiest to see and identify as far as that goes. What's the disadvantage that we talked about to
They
ear
fall
notching?
off easily.
They get
They can rip
snagged.
the ears.
They don't necessarily fall off, but they can get snagged in like a fence or something like that in another animal's teeth and get ripped out of the ear, especially if they get lost out in the pasture. Then you have two black cows that are identical that come back to the barn, both having to get their ear tags ripped out, and you say, well, shoot, which one is which?
Then you guess.
I was
No.
thinking to myself, but I
Is
saw
there
it
another
always
color?
yellow.
No, they've got lots of different colors.
I mean, I would have just assumed since it was brighter, I could see it better.
So they've got lots of different colors. Make sure you guys are listening, please.
Does the color matter? Shut up.
They've got lots of different colors. All the colors are pretty bright so that they're easy to see. The color doesn't really matter other than the preference of the person. Some people might use different colors for like different years just to help color code. Maybe if it's like the spring 2021 calves, they might put like a green tag in their ear. Fall 2021 calves, they might use like a different color just so from afar, if they're sorting or if they're giving wormers or something like that, they can almost color code them. So it's really just kind of up to the producer at that point. One that's really important, that's a legality, is female goats and female sheep have to have something that's called a scrapie tag. And so those are for female sheep and female goats, and those are federally issued ear tags. So you register as a farm and they send you a pack of them, and they have a long ID number on them. And basically that helps when these animals go from farm to farm, it helps track them back to where they originally came from. So it's actually more of like a tracking system to be able to keep track of where all these different animals
Did you say
go.
that's only for goats?
And sheep.
I have a female goat.
Wait, why is it only for the female?
Because it's more for a breeding stock kind of deal. So for males, they don't track that quite as much. More for tracking like offspring and stuff like that too.
So I don't know if you said this, I just totally have missed it, but why does it only goats and sheep?
I'm not really 100% sure, honestly. It's something with the fact that those species, I think there's, I don't want to say different diseases that they could carry, but there's different reasons that they would want to track those offspring that could be passed down genetically. So the government just like, those breed associations just like to track those. Next form of identification is an ear notch. So we're not going to go super into how to read these. We'll do this a lot your junior year, but ear notching is only done on pigs. Okay. And ear is actually split into quadrants. So it's kind of like knowing a special code. And so if I put 2 notches in this quadrant that represents the number 1, that would be a number 2 pig because it has 2 ones. Okay? This quadrant would be the number. Yeah, go ahead and go. This would be the number 3 quadrant, number 9 quadrant, 27 quadrant, and the tip of the ear represents 81.
What?
So,
Is that as high as it goes?
Why
yes.
does that make any sense?
So it does make sense, and I'll tell you why.
It's
For
kind of like
ear
this,
notching, you cannot, guys. You should be writing stuff down because you're going to need to know this. For ear notching, you cannot have more than 2 quadrants or 2 notches in a single quadrant. Okay, so I could have 2 number 1s and a number 9, and that would be a number 11 pig, right? Because 9 plus 1 plus 1 is 11. You guys see how it's kind of working so far?
Nah.
So the reason you can't have more than 2 and they're really odd numbers is because if I had 3 1s, what would that equal?
3.
If I had 3 3s, what would that equal?
9.
If I had 3 9s, what would that equal?
27.
If I had 3 27s, what would that equal? So that's why they're those numbers that they're in that multiples of well, of 9, I guess, of 3 of 9. So when you have no more than 2, you're trying to accomplish the number with as few notches as possible. So if this number here was a number 75 hog, the highest number I can do here is 27. 27 and 27 is what? 54. So I can do 2 notches there. 54 plus 9 is what?
53. 63.
63 plus 9 is what?
71.
71. So I'm still under.
Wait, 72, I think.
Which one is it?
I think it's 9, 10, 11, 12, 72, yeah.
72. Okay. 72 plus 3.
75.
So I reach my number in as few notches as possible.
So instead
Right.
of doing like 75 ones,
Right. Instead of trying to do 1s and then 3s and then 9s and then 27s, is I start from the bigger number and work my way down with what'll
What
fit.
happens
I
if
feel
you
like that
just-
takes a
wait,
lot of
how would
time.
you notch the 81?
On the tip of the ear, like this.
just take off the tip.
You just take off the tip.
Yeah,
Kinda.
no tip.
It makes like an indent. It works. Because the pig's ear is more like rounded up the end. Kind of like that. So it does not like that.
I feel like that does take a lot of time though.
Not once you get really efficient at it. You kind of
Like,
figure it.
like the
When you're looking at a pig, your left, when you're looking at it, not the pig's left, okay? But your left when looking at a pig represents the litter number. And your right, when you're looking at the pig, represents the individual number. So if I have a whole bunch of pigs out of the same litter and it's a 75th litter, I'm going to notch, all of them are going to have the same notches on their litter ear. And then I would notch them, the first pig would have a 1 from that litter, second pig would have a 2, third pig would have a 3, fourth pig would have a 4, right? And you notch an individual number for each litter. So then I would write this like 75-4. And that's a really quick crash course in ear notching. Your junior year will spend like a week on ear notching and you guys will become really good at it.
We're gonna
We're
do
gonna
it.
notch ears.
Yeah.
Our own ears.
Is that what
What
those
do
pig
you
ears?
mean
Oh, is
kind
that
of?
what those pig ears are for?
So that's basically how you do it. Pro to that is it's super permanent, right? You do have to do it when they're about the first week, really, because their ears are still very floppy. So it really doesn't hurt them very much, and it's all cartilage. There's just a couple of veins that run through the ear, kind of like that. So as long as you don't nick a vein, usually they don't even bleed. So you notch them and they go, ah! And then that's about it. So, but it's pretty permanent. They grow with the pig. They never leave the pig. So it's the tricky thing is they're kind of hard to read if you're not familiar with the system.
Just like we hear the noise.
Tattoo is also very permanent. There's ear tattoos and carcass tattoos. So this is a rabbit ear tattooer. You load these little guys that are shaped, there's needles shaped as different numbers that are real long and pointy. And you load that in here. You stamp it. There's a, you can pass those around. There's an ink stamp that you put in there and squeeze it on. And it puts ink on the needles. And then you put the rabbit's ear in between. You lock them in, put the rabbit's ear in between, and and it tattoos them real quick and leaves the ink inside, just like a person tattoo. They also go, eh. If you guys thought rabbits were quiet animals, they're not. They scream a lot.
Wait, does that one like the rest stay in forever? Yeah.
Well, the
It's
needles just go
wears
in and
off.
back out.
No, yeah, but like does it eat?
The ink stays in pretty much forever. At least
It
for a rabbit.
wears off like after a while.
Yeah, but if you can't tell, if you just stick a flashlight on the other side, you'll be able to see the number.
Yeah, you can almost always still see them. Just like a human tattoo, they kind of fade after a while.
You'll
Um,
get it.
So human tattoos, they also have something called a slap tattoo that's used a lot of times for pigs at the fair. So it's basically the same thing. They'll load the number cartridges in there, put it in ink, and then basically on the hip of the animal, they'll take the slap tattooer and just slap each side of the pig real quick. Needles go in, needles go back out. And it actually tattoos the skin deep enough that when they process that animal, each cut of meat, each cut of the carcass is going to have that tattoo on it. So as they process those pigs, if they find something that's really wrong that goes back to the producer, even on the production line, they're able to see where that carcass came from, as like the FDA is inspecting it, and they can see that far down. Those aren't really legible after you wash the ink off. They're legible on the carcass, but on the live animal, not so much. Branding, there's actually two types of branding. A lot of the times you see these in like Old West movies, right, where like maybe it's like a backwards circle R or something like that is the farm's brand. Those are done. There's two types of branding. There is heat branding and there's cool branding. Heat branding is done by getting a wrought iron really hot and then scalding it on the hide. Cool branding is done by doing the same thing, but more of like a liquid nitrogen, dry ice kind of thing. You put the metal in that, it gets so cold.
I think she said that heat.
So
Okay.
you put that on the animal. The cool branding has been developed in more recent years. Obviously, the cowboys didn't carry around liquid nitrogen with them and like dip their iron in it, right? They built the fire, they heated over the fire, they branded it that way. It's been developed more in recent years because it is a little bit less immediately painful for the animal because it kind of numbs it as you're like branding them, so they don't feel it as much as like the burn. But basically, that brands the hide. More so used out west in like cattle drives and stuff, so you can see what farm that animal came from or needs to go back to.
They'll often like get infected because like it's a burn. Like if we burn ourselves.
It doesn't get infected because have you guys ever watched old movies where like when they get a wound, they'll cauterize the wound?
Yeah.
So cauterizing it is literally like taking a hot iron and basically like
100. That's a big deal.
basically like when you get a fray on your sleeves, on your hoodies, if you take fire to it just really briefly, it'll like rubberize it, right? So it doesn't fray anymore. You're kind of doing the same thing to your skin. You're putting heat to it where it basically like closes those veins, those arteries. So it's not going to actually get infected because you're kind of self-cauterizing as you're burning.
Joe can be an
On
example.
a TV show, I noticed that
Where's
the
Joe?
ranchers branded each other.
There you go.
Yeah,
That phone
solid.
is right at you.
It looks very painful.
Probably.
I forced one guy to get it.
The other thing that I want to teach you guys really quick, and we're going to probably soapbox this for the next little bit, is something that is medication.
Are we writing this one down?
Yeah.
No, but we can put it up there.
So different types of medications that you can give to your animals. There's something called an IV, which is intravenous. Again, we'll go a lot more in depth, and you guys will practice giving these your junior year. We kind of learn about them now. Bless you. So that is giving an injection straight into the vein, just like an IV you might get when you go to the hospital. There is what's called IM, which is intramuscular. Okay, that's like when you go to get your vaccines or something and they just stick the needle straight in your arm. Okay, it's going into the muscle, it's going into the fibers of the muscle and distributing through the body that way. There's something called sub-Q, which stands for subcutaneous. That's probably so wrong, but fine. That means under the skin. So basically, if you kind of take your hand like this, you can pinch your skin and pull up. And so that's something that's called tenting. Basically, for a sub-Q injection, you pull up the skin like that. You put the needle in sideways, like it's somebody walking into the tent, okay? And then it just goes under the skin and distributes right underneath that layer of skin there. There's also 2 other ways that you can give medications. The first one is topical. And so basically that would be like if you guys have ever put a flea treatment on your animals, like where you put it right here on like the small of your dog's neck so they can't turn around and lick it off. You would do that for cattle or something like that too, like a fly repellent or like a wormer, and it absorbs down through the skin. There's also something called a drench, which is an oral administration. Basically, you would use what's called a bolus gun, and it's a really long tube that you could put like a pill or something down in, right, or even like a liquid. You stick that tube to the back of the animal's throat. So basically, I'll use Kelly as an example, or Chloe as an example. Basically, you take the animal, you tip their neck back so it opens their. So funny. Makes it open their throat up. Okay. You shove the bolus gun to the back of their throat, put it in the liquid or put it in the pill, and it makes them swallow it. Okay. They can't put it back up at that point, so that way you don't try to give like you give a baby medicine and they just like spit it back out, right? They can't spit it back out, so it makes them immediately like swallow it, and it goes in right away. So that's what's called a drench gun, is to do it that way. Here's what's super important about medications, okay? And again, we're kind of hitting surface level of this stuff. We get a lot deeper. Joe got to study this stuff this year, where we got a lot more in depth. We were giving injections and practicing with actual syringes and stuff like that. So the main thing to know, you can also do a medicated feed, where like the feed would actually have like medication in it, right? The biggest thing to talk about with medication, again, Joe knows this is gonna get me on my soapbox, is something called a withdrawal time, okay? So withdrawal time is the amount, and then write this down, is the amount of time that must pass for a medication to completely work its way through an animal's body, okay? So if I give a medication on Tuesday at noon, and it has a 3-day withdrawal time, Tuesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday, Thursday to Friday, Friday at noon, there should be no more residue of that drug in that animal's body, and their blood system and their muscles and anything, okay? So it's the amount of time it takes that drug to work its way through. Withdrawal time is a federal law. It is federally illegal to slaughter an animal who has been given medications for which the withdrawal time has not been properly observed. That's why when you guys go to the fair, if you guys have ever taken livestock to the fair, you fill out what's called a DUNF form. Okay, it's a little like 3-colored piece of paper that you fill out and turn in. It's called the drug use notification form. And basically it's an affidavit saying there's no medications in my animal system, or yes, I treated it yesterday with this specific medication. This medication, this is the time I gave it. This is the date I gave it. It has a 3-day withdrawal time. This is the date that withdrawal time is up. The withdrawal time is up before this animal's going to go to slaughter at the end of the fair. Okay, so it's alerting the people that if there is medication, we're making sure that specific tagged animal, we're observing that withdrawal time and making sure it's going to pass before it's slaughtered. I'm going to say this one more time. It is federally illegal to slaughter an animal that has drugs in its system. Okay, I'm going to get on a very short soapbox here. How many of you guys have ever heard a commercial where it says, our meat is antibiotic free?
Have you seen meat commercial?
Have you guys ever seen it in the store where there's a big sticker on a slice of meat that says antibiotic free?
Yeah.
So those stickers, I'm going to tell you this really quick. This is super important to know. A lot of times by putting that sticker on it, they're going to jack the price of that meat up a decent amount. You're going to pay like $7 for a meat that says antibiotic free on it, and like $3 for a meat that doesn't have that sticker. It is federally illegal to slaughter an animal that has drug residue in its system.
So it's basically the same thing.
So the meat itself is not going to have any antibiotics present at all. That is not federally legal. So if you see a product that says antibiotic free,
Yeah.
okay, if you see a product that says antibiotic free and the price is jacked up because of it, you're paying for nothing. You're paying for no difference other than the fact that these people said, we're going to put this sticker on it because people are going to think that that's special and they'll pay more money for it. Okay, hang on for just a second. Let me finish this super quick. So, it doesn't matter, but here's the question that I want to ask for you. Some people will say, we raised this animal without antibiotics. Let me ask you this question. If an animal is sick, if your dog is sick at home, what are you going to do?
Go to the vet and get pills.
I'm going to go to the vet and get medication. I'm going to give it medication, right? Are you going to let it lay there and suffer just because you don't want to give it drugs?
No.
No. If you have a piece of, or an animal that's livestock that is sick, what are you going to do?
Treat it.
Give it your own.
I'm going to treat it, okay? I'm going to give it the medication that it needs to feel better so that it feels better. As long as I observe that withdrawal time, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's some food manufacturers and some people out there who make it out to seem that anytime we give an animal an antibiotic, it's a bad thing and then that meat is condemned, when really it would almost be inhumane not to treat that animal if it's sick, right? But as long as we're observing that withdrawal time, everything's fine.
Wouldn't it make it worse if they like butchered like the animal and it did have a disease? Like if they sold the
Yeah,
food to the
depending on
animal?
what the disease is, if it factors the meat or not.
Okay, so in my chicken water,
Hey guys, hang on for just 1 second.
I have like this little thing I put at Roking. It's like electrolyte,
Mhm.
like powder you can put in it to give them electrolytes. Does that count as like?
So all that you need to do is check, anytime you put anything like that in your animal's feed, water, anything like that, check the label, read the label, and on the label it will say if there's a withdrawal time that needs observed or not.
Okay.
But electrolytes are super common to give.
Yeah, it's like you feed your cow Gatorade.
Feed it Gatorade.
Cows.
I do every week.